My name is Sarah, and for 22 years, I've been the invisible daughter in the Mitchell family. You know the type? The one who gets forgotten in family photos, whose achievements go unnoticed, whose birthday is treated like any other Tuesday. But this year, something changed. This year, I decided I'd had enough of being the afterthought. It started when I was 7 years old. My younger brother Jake had just turned 5, and my parents threw him a party that looked like something out of a Disney movie. They rented a bounce house, hired a magician, and invited every kid in the neighborhood. The backyard was transformed into a wonderland of balloons, streamers, and a cake that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. 2 weeks later, it was my birthday. I woke up that morning with the kind of excitement only a child can feel, convinced that if Jake got a magical celebration, mine would be even better. After all, I was the older sister, the responsible one who helped with chores and got good grades. I found my parents in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper like it was any other morning. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Mom said without looking up from her crossword puzzle. "There's cereal in the pantry." That was it. No decorations, no party, no friends invited over. Just a store-bought cupcake with a single candle after dinner and a gift card to Target that they clearly picked up at the grocery store checkout line. "But Jake got a bounce house," I said, my 7-year-old voice trembling with confusion and hurt. "Jake's party was special because he's our baby," Dad explained, not even bothering to put down his newspaper. "You're a big girl now, you don't need all that fuss." That was the beginning of a pattern that would define the next 15 years of my life. My parents, Linda and Robert Mitchell, weren't intentionally cruel people. They weren't monsters who set out to emotionally damage their eldest daughter. They were just indifferent. To them, I was the easy child, the one who didn't require attention because I never demanded it. I was responsible, independent, and academically successful. In their minds, that meant I didn't need the same level of investment as my siblings. Jake, 3 years younger than me, was the athletic golden boy. Every soccer game was a family event. Every trophy was celebrated with dinner at his favorite restaurant. When he wanted to try baseball, they bought him a complete set of professional equipment. When he expressed interest in guitar lessons, they found the most expensive instructor in town. Then there was my youngest sibling, Emma, born when I was 8. She was the princess, the baby girl who could do no wrong. Her nursery was professionally decorated. Her birthday parties were Pinterest-worthy events that other parents used as inspiration. When she was old enough for dance classes, they didn't just enroll her. They bought her custom costumes and drove her to competitions 3 states away. Meanwhile, I learned to celebrate my own achievements in silence. When I made honor roll, I put the certificate on the refrigerator myself. When I got accepted to college with a partial scholarship, I had to interrupt their discussion about Jake's upcoming basketball tournament to share the news. "That's nice, honey," Mom said, barely glancing at the acceptance letter. "Jake, did you remember to pack your cleats?" I learned not to expect much, so I was rarely disappointed. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Every ignored accomplishment, every forgotten birthday, every time they bragged about Jake and Emma to friends while I sat invisible beside them, it all accumulated into a deep well of pain that I kept carefully hidden. College was supposed to be my escape, my chance to be seen and valued for who I was rather than overlooked for who I wasn't. And in many ways, it was. I thrived academically, made genuine friendships, and discovered talents I never knew I had. For the first time in my life, I felt like I mattered. But the family dynamics remained unchanged during my visits home. Jake's high school football career dominated every conversation. Emma's dance recitals were family events that required weeks of planning and preparation. My dean's list achievements and leadership positions in student organizations were met with distracted nods and quick subject changes. The summer before my senior year, I landed a competitive internship at a marketing firm in the city. It was unpaid, but it was exactly the kind of experience that would set me apart in the job market after graduation. I was proud of myself for landing it against hundreds of other applicants. When I shared the news at dinner, Dad looked up from his phone just long enough to say, "That's good, Sarah. Hey, did you guys see that Jake made varsity quarterback?" And just like that, the conversation shifted to Jake's football season and Emma's upcoming dance competition. My internship, the thing I was most proud of in my entire life up to that point, became an afterthought in under 30 seconds. That night, I called my college roommate and cried for the first time in years. Not the quiet, hidden tears I'd shed as a child, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone who'd finally reached their breaking point. You need to talk to them, my roommate advised. They probably don't even realize they're doing it. But I knew better, they realized, they just didn't care enough to change. After graduation, I moved back home temporarily while I searched for a full-time job. It was supposed to be just for a few months, but the job market was tougher than expected, and I ended up staying for almost a year. It was during this time that I got a front row seat to just how extreme the favoritism had become. Jake was now a senior in high school, being recruited by several colleges for football. Every day brought new calls from coaches, new scholarship offers, new reasons for my parents to beam with pride. They treated each recruitment letter like a lottery ticket, celebrating every possibility with expensive dinners and proud social media posts. Emma, now 14, had become a competitive dancer with genuine talent. Her competitions required weekend travel, expensive costumes, and private coaching sessions that cost more per hour than I made at my part-time retail job. But my parents paid for it all gladly, often joking about having to take out a second mortgage to fund her dreams. Meanwhile, I was sending out resumes, working at a clothing store to pay for my own expenses, and slowly watching my college confidence erode under the weight of family indifference. The breaking point came in March, about 2 months before my 22nd birthday. I had just received a call back for a dream job interview at a respected marketing agency in the city. It was exactly what I'd been working toward, a chance to use my degree and launch my career. I burst into the living room, where my parents were watching TV with Jake and Emma, practically vibrating with excitement. I got a call back, I announced. The Morrison agency wants to interview me for their junior marketing position. It's exactly what I've been hoping for. Mom looked up from her show just long enough to say, "That's nice, dear. Emma, don't forget you have practice tomorrow morning." Dad didn't even acknowledge that I'd spoken. I stood there for a moment, waiting for something more. A congratulations, a question about the job, any sign that they cared about this major development in my life. But the conversation had already moved on to Emma's dance schedule and Jake's upcoming game. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, finally understanding what I'd been too young to articulate all those years ago. I wasn't just the overlooked child, I was the unwanted one. The mistake that came before they figured out how to be proper parents. As my 22nd birthday approached, I watched my parents with a new kind of attention. I wanted to see if this year would be different, if maybe they'd finally recognize that I was an adult who deserved acknowledgement and celebration. 2 weeks before my birthday, Emma mentioned that she wanted a pool party for her upcoming 15th birthday in July. "That sounds wonderful," Mom exclaimed immediately. "We could rent those floating decorations I saw on Pinterest, and maybe hire that catering company that did such a beautiful job for the Johnsons." They spent the next hour planning Emma's party, which was still 4 months away. They discussed themes, guest lists, and whether they should hire a DJ or just use a playlist. The enthusiasm in their voices was something I hadn't heard directed toward any of my events in 15 years. 3 days before my birthday, Jake mentioned wanting to celebrate the end of football season with his teammates. "We should have them over for a barbecue," Dad said immediately. "I'll fire up the grill, get some steaks, make it a real celebration." "Can we do it this weekend?" Jake asked. "Of course, whatever you want, son." I listened to this exchange while washing dishes, wondering if they remembered that this weekend was my birthday weekend. But I didn't say anything. I'd learned long ago that advocating for myself only led to disappointment. The day before my birthday, I couldn't help myself. I dropped what I thought was a subtle hint. "I can't believe I'm turning 22 tomorrow," I said while we were all eating breakfast together. Mom replied, scrolling through her phone. "Emma, your costume for regionals came in. We need to make sure it fits properly." "Jake, Coach Williams called about your scholarship paperwork," Dad added, not even looking up from his newspaper. My birthday, less than 24 hours away, wasn't even worth a glance. I woke up on my 22nd birthday to silence. Not the expectant silence of a surprise waiting to unfold, but the empty silence of a day that held no significance for anyone but me. I got dressed, did my hair, and put on a little makeup, not because I was expecting anything special, but because I wanted to look nice for myself. I wanted to feel like the day mattered, even if no one else thought it did. Downstairs, the kitchen was empty except for Jake, who was eating cereal while scrolling through his phone. "Morning," I said. "Hey," he replied without looking up. I waited for him to remember what day it was. We'd shared 22 years of birthdays, after all. He'd been at every single one of my celebrations, meager as they were. But he finished his cereal, put his bowl in the sink, and headed back upstairs without another word. Mom appeared a few minutes later, already dressed and checking items off a list on her phone. "Good morning, sweetie. I'm running errands today. Emma needs new point shoes, and I want to get those decorations for Jake's barbecue tomorrow. There's leftover pizza in the fridge for lunch." She grabbed her purse and keys, already halfway to the door before I found my voice. "Mom, it's my birthday." She paused, one hand on the doorknob, and turned back with a look of mild surprise. "Oh, happy birthday, Sarah. Sorry, I'm just so scattered with everything going on. We'll do something nice for dinner, okay?" And then she was gone, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the crushing realization that my own mother had forgotten my birthday entirely until I reminded her. Dad came down an hour later, dressed for work despite it being Saturday. "Emergency at the office," he explained, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Some client crisis that can't wait until Monday." "Dad, it's my birthday," I said quietly. He stopped mid-pour, coffee splashing slightly as his hand jerked. "Right, happy birthday, kiddo. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay?" This weekend was now, today was Saturday, but I didn't point that out. "Jake's having his teammates over tomorrow for a barbecue," I said instead. "Yeah, should be fun, good bonding for the team." He screwed the lid on his travel mug and headed for the door. "I'll probably be home late, don't wait up." And then he was gone too, leaving me alone in the house on my birthday morning. I spent the morning of my 22nd birthday sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and thinking about patterns. Not just the pattern of forgotten birthdays and overlooked achievements, but the deeper pattern of how my family viewed me. I wasn't their daughter in the same way Jake and Emma were their children. I was more like a distant relative who happened to live in their house, someone they were fond of in a vague way, but didn't feel particularly connected to or responsible for. The evidence was overwhelming when I really looked at it. Their social media accounts were filled with proud posts about Jake's athletic achievements and Emma's dance successes. Photos of family vacations showed Jake and Emma front and center, while I was either cropped out entirely or relegated to the background. Even their Christmas cards from the past few years featured professional photos of the three of them, with me notably absent because I'd been away at college during the photo sessions. I wasn't just forgotten, I was erased. Around noon, Emma came downstairs, still in her pajamas despite having dance practice in an hour. "Why aren't you getting ready for practice?" I asked. "Mom called and said she'd be back in time to drive me," Emma replied, opening the refrigerator and staring at its contents with the dissatisfaction only a teenager could muster. "She went to get your point shoes." "I know, she's also picking up something for Jake's party tomorrow." Emma grabbed a yogurt and closed the refrigerator door. "Are you going to be here for it?" "It's at our house, where else would I be?" Emma shrugged. "I just thought maybe you had plans or whatever." Plans? On my birthday. As if anyone in this family had ever bothered to make plans with me or for me. "No plans," I said. "Cool, can you help me with my hair for practice? Mom usually does it, but she's not here." So I spent my 22nd birthday morning doing my little sister's hair for dance practice, listening to her chatter about her friends and her teachers and her upcoming competitions. She never once acknowledged what day it was. When Mom got home and whisked Emma away to practice, I was alone again. The silence of the house felt different now, not peaceful but hollow. By 6 o'clock, I was dressed nicely and waiting in the living room. Mom had said we'd do something nice for dinner, and despite everything, I still held onto a thread of hope that maybe they'd pull together some kind of birthday celebration. Jake came home from hanging out with friends, grabbed a soda from the kitchen, and headed straight up to his room. "Jake," I called after him, "are we doing anything for dinner?" "I ate at Tyler's house," he called back without stopping. Mom and Emma returned from dance practice around 7, both looking tired. "How was practice?" I asked Emma. "Good, we're working on this really complicated lift sequence for regionals." She collapsed onto the couch next to me. "I'm exhausted." "What do you want to do about dinner?" I asked Mom, who was sorting through mail at the kitchen counter. "Oh, right, dinner." She looked up, clearly having forgotten her morning promise. "I'm honestly too tired to cook. Emma, what do you want?" "Can we just order pizza?" Emma asked. "Sure." Mom reached for her phone to place the order, then paused. "Sarah, is pizza okay for your birthday dinner?" The question hung in the air, highlighting everything that was wrong with the situation. Pizza ordered as an afterthought wasn't a birthday dinner, it was just dinner that happened to fall on my birthday. "Pizza's fine," I said, because what else could I say? Dad came home just as the pizza arrived, looking genuinely surprised to find us all gathered around the dining table. "What's the occasion?" he asked, loosening his tie. "It's Sarah's birthday," Mom reminded him. "Right, of course." He sat down and opened the pizza box. "So, how does it feel to be 22? It felt like being invisible, but I couldn't say that. "It feels the same as 21, I said instead. "That's the thing about birthdays after 21, Dad said, taking a bite of pizza. They start to blend together. After dinner, Mom disappeared into her office to work on something for Emma's dance team. Dad settled in front of the TV to watch a basketball game. Emma went upstairs to video chat with her friends. I cleaned up the dinner dishes alone, which somehow felt appropriate. On my birthday, just like every other day, I was the one taking care of things while everyone else moved on with their lives. There was no cake, no presents, no happy birthday song, just pizza eaten in relative silence and then everyone scattering to their own activities. At 10 o'clock, I went upstairs to my room and closed the door. I sat on my bed and looked around at the space that had been mine for over a decade. Unlike my siblings' rooms, which had been redecorated multiple times to reflect their changing interests, mine looked almost exactly the same as it had when I was in middle school. The same bedspread, the same posters, the same furniture. It was like they'd frozen me in time and never bothered to notice I'd grown up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the birthday celebrations I'd witnessed over the years, Jake's elaborate parties, Emma's themed celebrations, even the casual gatherings my friends had thrown for each other in college. I thought about what a normal 22nd birthday might have looked like if I'd been born into a different family. Around midnight, I got up and walked to my closet. In the back, behind old school clothes and forgotten costumes, was a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were mementos from my childhood, school awards, certificates, photos, and report cards. Things I'd saved because no one else had bothered to. At the very bottom of the box was a photo that made my heart stop. It was from Jake's 8th birthday party 5 years ago. The entire extended family had come: grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Jake was in the center of the photo, beaming in front of an elaborate dinosaur-themed setup. Our parents flanked him on either side, their faces glowing with pride and joy. I wasn't in the photo. I remembered that day clearly. I'd been the one helping Mom set up the decorations, serving food to guests and cleaning up spills. But when it came time for the family photo, somehow I'd been forgotten. No one had called my name or looked around to see where I was. But that wasn't the photo that would change everything. That photo was on my phone, taken just hours earlier. I opened my camera roll and scrolled to the picture I'd taken of my birthday celebration. It was a single slice of leftover pizza on a paper plate, sitting alone on our dining table. No candle, no decoration, no sign that it was anything special. Just a sad piece of pizza photographed in the harsh overhead light of our kitchen. I'd taken it as a joke for myself, a way to document the absurdity of celebrating my 22nd birthday with leftover takeout. But looking at it now, it told a much bigger story. This wasn't just a bad birthday photo, it was evidence of 22 years of neglect. I opened Instagram and stared at the photo for a long time. My finger hovered over the share button as I debated whether I had the courage to do what I was thinking about doing. Then I thought about Jake's recruitment celebration dinner just last week, the one that had been posted on both of my parents' social media accounts with captions full of pride and excitement. I thought about Emma's competition photos that got dozens of likes and comments from family friends. I thought about all the ways my siblings' lives were documented and celebrated while mine passed by unnoticed. I started typing. This is what my 22nd birthday dinner looked like. One slice of leftover pizza, eaten alone, while my family was too busy with other things to remember it was my birthday until I reminded them. This is what 22 years of being the forgotten child looks like. I paused, reading the caption over and over. It felt harsh, but it was true. Every word of it was true. I added, asterisk, I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm just tired of pretending that being invisible in your own family is normal. Then, before I could lose my nerve, I hit share. I fell asleep around 2 a.m., my phone face down on the nightstand. I didn't want to see if anyone had liked or commented on my post. Part of me regretted putting something so personal out there for everyone to see. I woke up to my phone buzzing continuously. At first, I thought it was my alarm, but it was only 7 a.m. and I'd set it for 9. The buzzing was notifications, lots of them. My Instagram post had exploded overnight. The first comment was from my college roommate. Sarah, I had no idea it was this bad. Are you okay? Then my best friend from high school. Wait, it was your birthday yesterday. Your parents didn't celebrate at all. A cousin I barely kept in touch with. This breaks my heart. I remember how excited you always were for birthdays as a kid. But it was the comments from family friends that made my heart race. These were people who knew my parents personally, who had been to our house, who had seen the dynamic firsthand without ever acknowledging it. Mrs. Henderson, our next-door neighbor. Oh, honey, I always wondered why you seemed so sad at family gatherings. This explains a lot. My mom's college friend. Linda needs to see this. This is heartbreaking. One of Dad's coworkers. I've met your siblings at company events, but I don't think I've ever heard Robert mention you. Now I understand why. The comments kept coming. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers who had been tagged by mutual connections were weighing in. Some shared their own stories of family favoritism. Others expressed shock at how blatantly I'd been overlooked. But it was the comment from my high school English teacher that made me cry. Sarah, you were one of the brightest, most thoughtful students I ever had. I always wondered why you seemed so unsure of yourself despite your obvious talents. Reading this, I finally understand. You deserved so much better. By 9 a.m., my post had over 200 likes and 50 comments. People were sharing it, tagging others, spreading it far beyond my original network. And then I heard my mother's voice downstairs, sharp and panicked. Robert, you need to see this. I got dressed quickly and went downstairs, my heart pounding. I found my parents huddled over Mom's phone in the kitchen, their faces pale. Sarah, Mom said when she saw me, her voice tight with controlled anger. What is this? She held up her phone, showing my Instagram post. The notification bubbles showed she'd been tagged in multiple comments. It's a photo of my birthday dinner, I said quietly. This is humiliating, Dad said, his voice low and dangerous. You made us look like monsters to everyone we know. I just posted the truth. The truth, Mom's voice got higher. The truth is that you're an ungrateful child who can't appreciate that we've given you everything you've ever needed. I needed parents who remembered my birthday without being reminded. I needed parents who cared about my achievements. I needed parents who included me in family photos. We do care about your achievements, Dad said. You're being dramatic. Name one, I challenged. Name one achievement of mine without looking at your phone or asking me to remind you. The silence stretched between us. I could see them both thinking, scrambling for something, anything they could recall about my life. You graduated college, Mom finally said. With what degree? Another pause. Marketing, she said, but her voice was uncertain. Communications, with a minor in graphic design. I graduated summa cum laude and won the department award for outstanding achievement. I also spent a semester studying abroad in Spain, where I became fluent in Spanish. You didn't attend my graduation because it was the same weekend as Jake's playoff game. They stared at me, and I could see the recognition dawning in their eyes. They really didn't know me at all. Sarah, Mom said, her voice softer now, we didn't realize. You didn't realize because you never paid attention. Do you want to know what it's like to be me in this family? It's like being a ghost. I live in this house, I eat at this table, I participate in conversations, but nobody really sees me. You see Jake, the athlete, you see Emma, the dancer, but you've never bothered to see me as anything more than the responsible one who doesn't require attention. That's not fair, Dad said. We've always treated all our children equally. I pulled out my phone and opened his Facebook profile. In the past year, you've posted 17 times about Jake's football achievements, 12 times about Emma's dance competitions. You want to guess how many times you've posted about me? I turned the phone so they could see his profile. Post after post of Jake in his uniform, Emma in her costumes, family photos from events I wasn't invited to or wasn't home for. 0, I continued. 0 posts about my internship, my graduation, my job interviews, my achievements. 0 photos of me at family events because I'm never included in them. 0 acknowledgement that I exist as anything other than background furniture. Jake appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. Emma wasn't far behind. What's going on? Jake asked. Your sister decided to air our family's dirty laundry on social media, Dad said coldly. What did you post? Emma asked, pulling out her phone. I watched my siblings read the post and the comments. I saw Jake's face change as he scrolled through the responses from people he knew, teammates' parents, teachers, family friends, all expressing sympathy for me and criticism for our parents. Sarah, he said quietly, I didn't realize. None of you realized because none of you wanted to see it. It was easier to focus on your own things than to notice that I was being erased from this family. The post continued to gain traction throughout the day. By evening, it had been shared dozens of times and had hundreds of comments. My phone was buzzing constantly with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. My parents retreated to their bedroom and stayed there most of the day, emerging only for whispered phone conversations with relatives who had seen the post. I caught fragments of these calls, Mom trying to explain the situation, Dad insisting the whole thing was blown out of proportion. Jake knocked on my door around dinner time. Can I come in? I nodded, and he sat on the edge of my bed, looking uncomfortable. I read all the comments, he said. People are really upset with Mom and Dad. Good. Sarah, I'm sorry, I never thought about it before, but you're right. They do treat us differently. It took social media for you to notice. He winced, yeah, and I feel like shit about that. He was quiet for a moment. I remember your birthdays being smaller than mine, but I always thought it was because you were older and didn't want big parties anymore. I was 7 when it started. Fuck, he ran his hands through his hair. I'm really sorry, I should have noticed, I should have said something. It was the first genuine apology I'd received from anyone in my family, and it meant more than he probably knew. It's not your fault, I said. You were a kid too. But I'm not a kid now, and I've been old enough to notice for years. He looked at me seriously. What can I do? How can I fix this? I appreciated that he wanted to help, but this wasn't something he could fix for me. Just see me, I said. Include me, ask about my life, remember important things. I can do that, he paused. For what it's worth, I've always thought you were the strongest one in this family. I don't think I could have handled being ignored the way you were. After Jake left, Emma appeared in my doorway. She looked younger than her 14 years, uncertain and worried. Are you really that sad? She asked. I've been that sad for a long time. But you always seem so normal. I got good at pretending. She came into my room and sat in my desk chair, spinning it slightly back and forth. Some of my friends saw your post, she said. They're asking me about it. What are you telling them? I don't know what to say because, you're right, Mom and Dad do pay more attention to me and Jake. She looked down at her hands. I always thought it was because we needed more help or something. You're so smart and good at everything. Being smart and responsible doesn't mean I don't need love and attention. I know that now. She looked up at me. I'm sorry I didn't notice. I'm sorry I never asked about your life or remembered your birthday without Mom reminding me. Emma's apology was different from Jake's. Where his came from guilt and newfound awareness, hers came from genuine regret and the wisdom that sometimes comes from being the youngest in a family, the ability to see dynamics that others miss. Thank you, I said. Will you forgive us, me and Jake? You're my siblings, of course I forgive you, but things need to be different going forward. They will be, she said with the certainty only a teenager can have. I promise they will be. My parents finally emerged from their bedroom around 10 p.m. They asked me to join them in the living room for a family meeting. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. We've been getting calls all day, Mom began. From your grandmother, your aunts, family, friends, even some of Dad's coworkers. Everyone wants to know how we could have failed you so badly. We've been doing some serious thinking, Dad added, and some serious looking at our behavior over the years. They had printed out copies of social media posts going back several years. The evidence was laid out on the coffee table like a case being presented to a jury. Photo after photo of Jake and Emma's celebrations, achievements, and milestones, with a glaring absence of anything related to me. We found this, Mom said, holding up a photo from Christmas 2 years ago. It was the family Christmas card photo, the professional one they'd had taken while I was away at college. We sent this to over 100 people. Our Christmas card that doesn't include our eldest daughter. She was crying now, real tears that seemed to come from a place of genuine remorse. We found posts about Jake's first day of high school, Emma's first dance recital, Jake's homecoming dates, Emma's birthday parties going back years. But Sarah, we couldn't find a single post celebrating you. Not one. We went through our photo albums, Dad continued. Physical photo albums, not just digital ones. Do you know how many family photos from the past 5 years include you? I shook my head. Seven photos out of hundreds. You're either not in them because you weren't invited to the event, or you're in the background while we're focused on your siblings. They had done their homework, I had to give them that. They'd spent the day confronting the reality of how they'd treated me, and the evidence was overwhelming. We don't have excuses, Mom said. We have reasons. You were always so independent, so capable, so willing to take care of yourself, but those aren't excuses. They're just explanations for inexcusable behavior. You were an easy child, Dad said, and we took advantage of that. We put all our energy into Jake's athletics and Emma's dance because they demanded our attention, and we assumed you didn't need the same level of involvement. But every child needs their parents' attention and pride, Mom continued. Every child needs to feel valued and celebrated, and we failed you completely in that regard. I sat there listening to them acknowledge what I'd known for 15 years. Part of me felt vindicated. Finally, they saw it. They understood. But another part of me felt empty. These apologies, genuine as they seemed, couldn't undo decades of neglect. What happens now? I asked. We want to make it right, Dad said immediately. How? They looked at each other, and I could see they'd discussed this. We want to celebrate you, Mom said. Properly, all the birthdays we missed, all the achievements we ignored. We want to make up for lost time. And we want to be better going forward, Dad added. We want to learn about your life, your interests, your goals. We want to be the parents you deserve. It sounded good in theory, but I'd heard promises from them before. I'll believe it when I see it, I said. Fair enough, Mom said. We know we have to prove ourselves. Words aren't going to be enough. By the next morning, my Instagram post had truly gone viral. It had been shared thousands of times across multiple platforms. The hashtag #ForgottenChild was trending, with people sharing their own stories of family favoritism and parental neglect. News outlets started reaching out. Local morning shows wanted interviews. Parenting blogs were writing articles analyzing the family dynamics revealed in my post. My parents were mortified by the attention, but they were also forced to confront the reality that their parenting failures were now public knowledge among everyone they knew. The most powerful response came from an unexpected source: my paternal grandmother, who lived across the country and only saw us during major holidays. She called the house phone, something she never did, and asked to speak to my father. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but Dad's face grew paler with each passing minute. "Yes, Mom, I understand. No, we didn't realize. I know, she's right. Yes, we've seen the comments. I understand you're disappointed." When he hung up, he looked devastated. "What did she say?" Mom asked. "She said she's been watching this family dynamic for years and wondered when someone would finally call us out on it. She said Sarah has always been her favorite grandchild because she's genuine and kind, but that she could see how invisible we made her feel during family visits." He sat down heavily on the couch. "She said she's ashamed to tell people that Sarah is her son's daughter because we've done such a poor job of raising her to feel valued. She said Sarah raised herself to be the person she is despite us, not because of us." The words hung in the air like a sentencing. Even my grandmother, who lived 2,000 miles away and saw us maybe twice a year, had noticed what was happening. "She's coming for a visit," Dad continued quietly. "She wants to take Sarah out for a proper birthday celebration and have a serious conversation with all of us about how this family functions." My phone buzzed with a text from my grandmother. "Sweetheart, I saw your post. I'm flying out next week. We're going to celebrate you the way you should have been celebrated your whole life. I'm so proud of the strong young woman you've become despite everything. Love you." For the first time since posting the photo, I cried. But these weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of relief. Someone in my family had always seen me, always valued me, even from a distance. 3 days later, my grandmother arrived with the force of a loving hurricane. At 72, she was still sharp as a tack and had no patience for her son's parenting failures. She took one look at our house and immediately began reorganizing our family dynamics. "Sarah, we're going shopping," she announced, "for your birthday celebration, the proper one you should have had." "Grandma, you don't need to." "Oh, but I do. 22 years of celebrations to make up for starting now." She took me to the fanciest restaurant in town for lunch, followed by a shopping trip where she insisted on buying me things I'd never even dreamed of having. Not because they were expensive, but because no one had ever cared enough to notice what I might want. She bought me books by authors I'd mentioned loving. She bought me art supplies because she remembered me doodling during family visits years ago. She bought me a necklace that wasn't flashy or expensive, but was delicate and beautiful and chosen specifically for me. But the most meaningful gift was a photo album she'd been keeping for years, pictures of me from every family visit, copies of school photos my parents had sent her, even printouts of social media posts from my college years that she'd saved because she was proud of me. "I've been documenting your life even when your parents weren't," she said as we flipped through the pages together. "Someone needed to remember that you matter." That evening, she orchestrated a family meeting that was unlike anything we'd ever had. "Sit," she told my parents, using the same tone she'd probably used when Dad was 5 years old. They said, "Robert, Linda, I want you to look at this album. Really look at it. This is what paying attention to a child looks like." She went through page by page, pointing out details about my life that she'd noticed and remembered from across the country while my parents, who lived in the same house, had missed completely. Here's Sarah at age 10, already showing signs of the creativity that would lead to her communications degree. Here's Sarah at 14, reading 3 books a week because she was intellectually curious and no one at home was engaging with her mind. Here's Sarah at 17, volunteering at the animal shelter because she has a natural compassion for creatures that can't advocate for themselves. She turned to look at my parents directly. "This is what it looks like when you pay attention to a child, when you see them as an individual with their own personality, interests, and needs. Sarah has been a remarkable person her entire life, but you were too busy with the squeaky wheels to notice the strong, steady daughter who was raising herself. Jake and Emma sat silently, absorbing their grandmother's words. I could see them processing not just what she was saying about me, but what it might mean about their own relationship with our parents. Grandma's right, Jake said quietly. Sarah, you've basically been like an adult in this family since you were little. You took care of yourself and helped take care of us, but mom and dad treated you like you didn't need anything from them. I needed them, I said simply. I just learned not to ask because asking only led to disappointment. Emma reached over and took my hand. We're going to be better, all of us. We're going to be the family you deserve. The viral post had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond our family. I started receiving messages from other people who had experienced similar family dynamics. Eldest daughters who had been parentified, responsible children who had been overlooked, siblings who had watched favoritism play out without knowing how to address it. A local therapist reached out and offered to work with our family pro bono, saying that our story represented a dynamic she saw frequently in her practice. My parents, to their credit, immediately agreed to family counseling. The first session was brutal. With a neutral third party guiding the conversation, years of resentment and pain came tumbling out. I talked about feeling invisible, unwanted, and constantly inadequate despite my achievements. My parents talked about their misguided assumption that independence meant I didn't need nurturing. Jake and Emma talked about their guilt over receiving attention they now realized came at my expense. Sarah has been functioning as a parentified child, the therapist explained to my parents. You placed adult responsibilities on her from a young age while withholding the emotional support and recognition that children need. This created a dynamic where she learned to be hyper-independent as a survival mechanism. The sessions weren't magic. They couldn't undo 22 years of damage overnight, but they provided a framework for understanding how we'd gotten to this point and how we might move forward. My parents started making concrete changes. They asked about my job search and actually listened to my answers. They put reminders in their phones for important dates in my life. They started including me in family photos and social media posts. But the most significant change was in how they talked about me to other people. Instead of the generic, Sarah's doing fine, responses I'd overheard for years, I started hearing them share specific details about my life with friends and relatives. Sarah just had a second interview with that marketing agency, I heard Mom tell her sister on the phone. She's so talented with design and messaging. We're really proud of how hard she's worked. It was a small thing, but it meant everything. 2 weeks after my viral birthday post, I got a call that changed my life trajectory completely. Sarah, this is Jennifer Morrison from Morrison Marketing Agency. We'd like to offer you the junior marketing position we interviewed you for. I accepted immediately, of course, but what Jennifer told me next was unexpected. I have to be honest with you, she said. Your Instagram post played a role in our decision. Not because we felt sorry for you, but because it showed us something important about your character and your communication skills. She explained that the post had demonstrated my ability to craft a compelling narrative, my understanding of social media engagement, and my courage in addressing difficult topics, all valuable skills in marketing. More importantly, she continued, it showed us that you're someone who stands up for herself and tells the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Those are qualities we value highly in our team. My first day at Morrison Marketing was everything I'd dreamed it would be. I was valued for my ideas, respected for my skills, and seen as an individual contributor rather than invisible background support. But the best part was calling my parents to tell them about my first day. How did it go, sweetheart? Mom asked, and I could hear genuine interest in her voice. I told her about my projects, my teammates, and my excitement about the work I'd be doing. She listened to every word and asked follow-up questions that showed she was really paying attention. We're so proud of you, she said when I finished. You've worked so hard for this opportunity, and you're going to be amazing at it. Later that evening, Dad posted a photo on Facebook, a screenshot of the Morrison Marketing website with my employee bio, along with a caption that read, "Proud Dad moment. Our daughter Sarah started her dream job today at Morrison Marketing. She's the most hardworking, talented, and resilient person we know. So excited to watch her career flourish. It was the first post about me on his social media in my entire adult life. And while it couldn't erase the years of being overlooked, it felt like a genuine step toward the relationship we should have always had. A month after my actual birthday, my family asked if they could throw me a proper celebration. Not to make up for missing your birthday, Mom clarified. Nothing can make up for that, but to celebrate who you are and how proud we are of you. I almost said no. Part of me didn't want to risk being disappointed again. But the bigger part of me, the part that had always hoped for this kind of recognition, said yes. They planned it carefully, thoughtfully. Instead of a generic party, they created a celebration that reflected who I actually was as a person. They decorated with books and art supplies rather than generic party decorations. They invited my college friends, not just family members. They made a photo display that included pictures from my life that they'd had to ask me to provide because they'd never taken them themselves. The cake was homemade, not because store-bought was bad, but because Mom had asked what kind I'd always wanted and then spent hours learning how to make it from scratch. But the most meaningful moment came when Dad stood up to make a toast. 22 years ago, we were blessed with a daughter who came into this world already wise, already kind, already strong, he began. And instead of nurturing those beautiful qualities, we took them for granted. We assumed that because Sarah didn't demand our attention, she didn't need it. We were wrong and we're sorry. He looked directly at me as he continued. Sarah, you raised yourself to be an extraordinary person despite our failures as parents. You are intelligent, creative, compassionate, and resilient. You are successful not because we pushed you, but because you had the strength and determination to push yourself. We are proud of you, we have always been proud of you, and we should have been telling you that every single day for the past 22 years. The room was silent except for the sound of people crying, including me. This party isn't about making up for what we missed, he concluded. It's about celebrating who you are right now and promising to see you, really see you, for the rest of our lives. Jake stood up next. Sarah, you've been the best big sister anyone could ask for, even when we didn't deserve it. You helped with homework, you listened to our problems, you celebrated our achievements even when yours were being ignored. You taught me what unconditional love looks like, and I'm sorry it took me so long to love you back the same way. Emma's toast was shorter but no less meaningful. Sarah, you're my hero. You're strong and smart and funny, and you never gave up on us even when you had every reason to. I want to be like you when I grow up, but I also want to be better at showing the people I love how much they matter to me. By the time they finished their toasts, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. 6 months after my viral Instagram post, our family had settled into a new normal that felt both foreign and wonderful. My parents asked about my work regularly and actually remembered what I told them. They included me in family discussions and decisions. They started a tradition of individual parent-child time, making sure each of us got focused attention rather than just group family interactions. Jake and I developed an actual sibling relationship for the first time in our lives. He asked for advice about college applications and girlfriend troubles. He invited me to his games and introduced me to his friends as his awesome big sister who went viral and changed our whole family. Emma and I bonded over shared interests I'd never known she had. She was interested in writing and art, things we could connect over. She started asking me for advice about school and friends, treating me like the big sister I'd always wanted to be. But perhaps the most significant change was in how I felt about myself. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I belonged in my own family. I felt valued, seen, and loved for who I was rather than tolerated for being easy to overlook. The viral post had done more than expose our family's dysfunction. It had forced all of us to confront our patterns and make conscious changes. It had given me a voice I'd never known I had and the courage to use it. My grandmother, who had extended her visit by several weeks, pulled me aside before returning home. You know what you did, don't you? She asked. I posted an embarrassing photo and aired our dirty laundry. No, sweetheart, you saved this family. Not just yourself, but all of you. You forced them to see what they were doing, not just to you, but to themselves. Parents who don't see their children fully are missing out on the greatest joy of parenthood. You gave them back their daughter and gave yourself back your family. She was right. The post had been about my pain, but it had ultimately been about healing. Not just for me, but for all of us. A year later, I was thriving in ways I'd never imagined possible. My career was taking off. I'd been promoted twice and was leading campaigns for major clients. My relationship with my family had transformed from painful obligation to genuine connection. But more importantly, I had learned to value myself in ways that weren't dependent on other people's recognition. The little girl who had spent decades trying to earn love and attention had grown into a woman who knew her own worth. I still posted on social media, but now my family engaged with those posts. They liked, commented, and shared my achievements. They tagged me in family photos and included me in their own posts about their lives. The original birthday post was still up, and it still got responses from people who found it and felt seen by it. I'd received hundreds of messages from other forgotten children, overlooked siblings, and parentified daughters who found strength in my story. Some people asked if I regretted posting something so personal and painful for the world to see. I didn't regret it for a second. That post had been my declaration of independence from a family dynamic that was slowly erasing me. It had been my refusal to continue pretending that neglect was normal or acceptable. It had been my demand to be seen, valued, and loved for who I was. And it had worked. Not because social media had magical powers, but because sometimes the truth, when spoken clearly and without apology, has the power to change everything. My family learned that attention isn't a finite resource that has to be rationed among children. Love doesn't have to be earned through achievement or demanded through difficult behavior. Every child deserves to feel seen, valued, and celebrated for who they are, not just for what they do. I learned that I had a voice worth using, a story worth telling, and a value that didn't depend on other people's recognition. 2 years after my 22nd birthday, I celebrated my 24th with a family that looked almost identical to the one I'd grown up in, but functioned completely differently. My parents threw me a surprise party, not to make up for past failures, but because they genuinely wanted to celebrate me. Jake drove home from college specifically for my birthday. Emma spent weeks planning decorations that reflected my personality and interests. The cake was decorated with photos from the past 2 years, pictures of me at work, with friends, with family, during travels and achievements and ordinary moments that someone had cared enough to document. But the most meaningful gift wasn't material. It was a scrapbook my family had been working on together, filled with all the moments they'd missed documenting over the years. They'd recreated certificates for achievements they'd ignored, printed photos from events they'd overlooked, and written letters acknowledging milestones they'd failed to celebrate at the time. "We can't give you back the birthdays we missed or the achievements we overlooked," the inscription read, "but we can promise that from now on, every moment of your life that matters to you will matter to us too." As I looked around at my family, really looked at them the way they now looked at me, I felt something I'd never experienced before, the absolute certainty that I was loved, valued, and seen for exactly who I was. The forgotten child had become the celebrated daughter, not through any change in herself, but through the simple act of refusing to remain invisible. My story isn't unique. Across the world, there are eldest daughters parentifying themselves, responsible children being overlooked, and family favorites receiving attention at their siblings' expense. There are birthday dinners that consist of leftover pizza and achievements that go unnoticed, and children who learn to celebrate themselves because no one else will. But my story is also proof that these dynamics don't have to be permanent. That families can change, that parents can learn, and that children can find their voices even after decades of silence. The photo I posted wasn't just evidence of neglect, it was a catalyst for transformation. It forced uncomfortable conversations, shattered convenient assumptions, and demanded that everyone involved take responsibility for their role in our family's dysfunction. Most importantly, it taught me that I had the power to change my circumstances, not by waiting for other people to see me, but by making myself impossible to ignore. Not by earning love through perfect behavior, but by demanding the love and respect I deserved simply by existing. The forgotten child had found her voice, and once she started speaking, everything changed. Today, when people ask me about going viral for such a personal and painful post, I tell them this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because the truth, when spoken clearly and without apology, has the power to heal families, transform relationships, and give forgotten children back their voices. And sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs to hear. If you connected with Sarah's story, you're not alone. Millions of children grow up feeling invisible in their own families, and it's never too late to demand the love and recognition you deserve. Whether you're the forgotten child or the parent who needs to do better, remember, families can change, but only when someone is brave enough to speak the truth. Sarah's courage to share her story didn't just transform her family, it gave countless others permission to stop accepting neglect as normal. Her single Instagram post became a movement of forgotten children finding their voices and demanding to be seen. The power to change your story has always been in your hands. Sometimes you just need the courage to use it. Rate this story 0-10 and let us know. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? What would you have done in Sarah's situation?